Okay.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we'll start the recording first. This is shir number 15. Today we're going to deal with psukim Chaf Beis and Chaf Gimel, and now I will give a shared screen. There we go. Okay, can everyone see? I can't see anybody, so you'll have to be verbal. Okay, so the psukim that we learned yesterday, say again?
Blank screen.
A white screen, blank.
You're seeing a blank screen. Okay, try this one more time. Here we go. Share screen.
Okay.
You see it now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so pasuk Chaf said as follows. Pasuk Chaf said, Chachmos, when you're looking for wisdom, in order to be able to ward off all of those temptations that attack a person, which Mishlei described in the previous psukim. So bachutz tarona, barachovos titen kola, berosh homios tikra bepischei sha'arim, be'ir amara tomer. So if you see it, if you can see it clearly, now tell me if this helps you see it at all. Just made it about as big as I can.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
if you notice, you'll see. So there are 4 places that we're talking about: bachutz, barachovot, berosh homios, ba'ir, and it's referring to the degree to which a person engages themselves in truth, engages themselves in Torah, because the degree to which we engage ourselves in Torah is the degree to which we get clarity, the degree to which we get the strength to be able to ward off the effects of what's going on in the street. So if our relationship with Torah is bachutz, is a superficial relationship, then tarona, we'll hear a voice like off in the distance. Barachovos, if it's rachav, it's wider, then titen kola, we'll hear that sound. It'll be compelling to us, but it won't be like taking over our ears. Berosh homios, if we're at the engaged in Torah and we hear it sound like the throngs of people we're learning with them, so then tikra bepischei sha'arim, so then we will hear it compellingly in the pischei sha'arim, in the doorways, in our ears, in our eyes, in our nose, in our mouth. Those are the openings of the sha'arim, of the gateways that lead inside of a person into the soul of a person. But if ba'ir, if we are engaged full body, completely in, like in a city of Torah, then amara tomer. It'll be just like it's spoken to us, like we hear the spoken word. It's compelling, it's there, it's in our face, it's very clear to us. And that's the way we have to relate to Chachma. We have to recognize that what wisdom does for us is that wisdom opens up the world for us, and it gives us a perspective that will allow us to then look at things that are tempting and to be able to push them away. Then comes pasuk Chaf Beis, and the truth is also pasuk Chaf Gimel. But we'll deal with them. I think we'll deal with them as in one at a time. So we pointed out yesterday, Ad Mosai, the pasuk begins, Ad Mosai, until when? Psoyim te'avu pesi. V'leitzim lotzon chamdu lahem. Uksilim yisnu das. So we're talking about 3 different types of people. 3 different types of people that don't engage in Chachma. Psoyim, we'll describe soon. Fools, leitzim, clowns, scoffers, uksilim, interesting translation, dullard, but also a different type. It's one of Shlomo Hamelech's fools. Exil literally translates as a fool. The pesi, why doesn't he connect? Because te'ahavu pesi, because he's completely snowed under. He's completely captured by his pesi, by those foolishness. Leitzim, why aren't they engaged? Because Lotzon chamdu lahem, because they are, the chamdu is from the word tachmod, right? Lo tachmod, to desire. They completely desire, they sort of need as a crutch their leitzanas, their scoffing. Uchsilim, and the fools, yisenu das. They hate das. And that's the reason why they don't engage. The Pesi, because he's engaged with his Pesikite. The Leitzim, because they're into Leitzanas, because they're Chaimed Leitzanas, because they need that Leitzanas. And the Ksil, the fool, he hates knowledge. Now you have to ask the question, why is the Pesi loving Pesi? Why don't we say that the Pesi is Chamad Pesi? And the Leitzim are Lotzon, they're scoffing, Te'ahavu lahem, is beloved by them. In other words, why is the verb Te'ahavu connected to the Pesi? Why is the verb Chamdu connected to the Leitzim? And why is the Yisneu Da'as connected to the Ksil? Okay, now how many of you, now I'm going to go back to regular screen. By the way, I'm going to try to put this up on the notes of the class. In other words, when I put the class on YouTube, so there's notes, and there's like a thing on the side in YouTube when you play the video. So I'm going to try to put it up there, so it still will be available. And you can see the pasuk over here. How many of you looked at the pasuk and saw that that's what the pasuk was talking to? Okay, we're gonna get used to this. that the pasuk was talking to three people, the Pesi, the Leitz, and the Ksil, and it was telling them why they stay away from what we've been discussing up until now, which is chachmos, which is wisdom, because te'evu, because chamdu, and because sinu, and that we have to figure out. Why is that the description of the Pesi's connection to Pesi, the Leitz's connection to Latzon, and the Ksil's connection to hatred of Das? Okay, let's get started. First of all, let's understand what these three things are. The Pesi we've met already, and we spoke about a Pesi, and we said that he is a person who is very easily swayed. You can convince a Pesi. The kind of fool a Pesi is that he's an easy target. He's an easy target. You can go after the Pesi, you can go after the fool, and you can convince him of anything, because he's not really connected to and committed to the things that he does. So Shlomo Hamelech turns to the three of them, and he says to them, Ad Mosai. He speaks. It's like a frustrated turn. Until when? How much longer are you going to do this? How much longer are you going to be engaged in your Pesi? And the reason why Shlomo Hamelech is so frustrated that the fool, that the person who is so easily swayed, the reason why he's so frustrated is because every one of you knows a person that you would brand a Pesi, that you would brand a person that is very, very easily swayed. A person, you put them in a room of people that are doing a certain thing, they'll go along with it. Put them in a room of people that are acting in a different way, they'll go along with that also. If you want to convince the person of doing something, there are a couple of buzzwords that you can use. You get right into the kishkas of the person, and you can get them to do whatever it is you need them to do. Sometimes you look at your children, and your children, you look at them and say, my children are they're very influenced. They're very vulnerable. They're trusting. They're vulnerable. But you say, I don't necessarily want to, I don't want to run them over. I don't want to be in control of them. I don't want to be a helicopter parent. I want to let my child go through life and do things and experience things in order to be able to make their own mistakes and to be able to learn from the mistakes that they're making. But then you watch them make ridiculous choices. And you know, what are you doing? But you can't say anything, because if you say anything, they're not exercising their free will. They're not becoming people. They're becoming you. They're doing what you want them to do, and they're not learning how to exercise themselves, how to develop themselves. But that's the most frustrating thing, when you see your child, stepping off a precipice, and they're going to crash and perhaps burn. And I'm not talking fatally burn, because if that's the case, then you have an obligation to help them. But they're just in the situation that they're in. They're just making the wrong choices. And you look at that and you say, I just wish I could do something, but I can't. It's not the best for them. Shlomo Hamelech is saying, Ad Mosai. It's so frustrating to watch you, because when you're standing on the outside, I can easily see the traps that you're falling into, and the things that you're getting involved in that are just going to destroy. They're going to eat you up. They watch the Pesi get fooled, and they watch the Pesi get brainwashed, and it's painful and it's frustrating. Now, the pasuk doesn't say that Shlomo Hamelech says that, why are you doing this? He's not asking the Pesi why he's doing it. He understands that a Pesi is a Pesi. A Pesi is influenced by the things around him. And therefore, when he sees that trap with the piece of cheese in it, he's going to jump after that piece of cheese, because he's a Pesi. That's what Pesis do. Pesis they can't get too engaged in Torah, because at the end of the day, somebody is going to come along and tell them something else, and it's going to pull them away from that. And therefore, Shlomo Hamelech says, Ad Mosai, for how long are you going to keep doing this? When are you going to grow up and stop being so fickle? When are you going to grow up and start thinking for yourself? Te'ehavu doesn't just mean to love something. Te'ehavu means to be completely pushed by something, to be allured by something, and to be enticed with the allure of something, that you're attracted to. It's external. You're in love with it, but you're not in love with it. You're in love with what it does for you. You're in love with the external part of it, with the outside part of it. And that's why we use for the Pesi the word te'ehavu. Who's the let's? What is leitzonos? So I think that in modern Hebrew we would translate the word leitz as clown. But I think that in Torah terminology, a leitzonos is called scoffing. Now, it's a type of comedy. It's a type of clowning around. There was a comedian that was an expert at this. I've mentioned this before, and his name was Don Rickles. For those that remember Don Rickles, that was his type of humor, where he would take things and he would basically just denude them of any meaning. He would take moments, he would take people, and he would slice right through them. I don't mean to give a share in comedy, but a few weeks ago, Jackie Mason died, and forget about the fact that Jackie Mason was once a rabbi, not a rabbi. Who knows what he was, and some of his comedy was a little bit off color, but he had an incredibly wise way, an incredibly witty way to make fun and to poke fun at certain Jewish things that we did without running down Jews. You never felt offended by the things he usually didn't feel offended by the things he said, but you looked at it and you said, Taka. When he would make jokes about the differences between Jews and non-Jews, and that he once gave a whole thing about in a Jewish, where is a Jewish toolbox? A toolbox in the home of a Jew is in the kitchen, and it's in the silverware drawer, because the knives make great. The top of the knife makes a great screwdriver. The back of the knife makes a great hammer. Right, and that was a Jew. He says a guy, he had a toolbox, and he had 3 layers to the toolbox, and he hacked and clapped against a dog. But by a Jew, all he needed was a butter knife. Okay, so you looked at it and you said, Taka, it's funny. You don't feel offended by it. Don Rickles, and again, I'm not running down anybody, but I just, if you recognize that kind of humor, So then that kind of humor was very, very biting. And that's what Leitzonis is. Leitzonis is looking at things and scoffing them, looking at things and being cynical about them, having to poke fun at things. We say that Amalek, that was really their midah. Because when Amalek came to the desert to fight with the Jews, the first thing they found was a mound of orla, a mound of foreskins that we had cut off from a recent bris milah. And they took the foreskins and they threw them klape malo. They threw them up to the heavens. This is the way the Medrash describes it. Now, what's amazing about this Medrash is I don't need to understand this Medrash literally. I don't need to understand this Medrash that it means that they walked into the desert, they saw this mound, like mound of leaves, they saw a mound of foreskins, and they were sitting there throwing them up to the heavens. Ha ha ha! I don't need to understand it that way. I need to understand what the Medrash is saying to me is that they looked at the orla, they looked at the foreskin that was cut off by the Jew, and they didn't see any kedusha, they didn't see anything holy. What they saw was a very serious operation that marred the Jew. Because they couldn't see kedusha in mundanity. They couldn't see past the surface of something. And that's what a letz is. What a letz is a person who sees only the surface, doesn't see what's deep, but there is a reason why he sees that surface. He sees that surface because he understands, he turns ikar into tafel and tafel into ikar. He turns the main into the secondary and the secondary into the main because he is petrified of the main. And therefore, if he can bust a hole in it, if he can burst its bubble, then it's not compelling to him. If he can listen to a shir and feel, while he's listening to the words, he's listening to a drush or to a shir, and he's saying to himself, oh my God, I'm guilty. How am I going to deal with this? The rabbi's a fool. Or I saw the rabbi doing something, he talked to a person in a way that's not menschlich, I don't need to listen to his words. That's leitzonos. There's a cynicism to that. And that is to protect the leitz, to protect himself from having to be compelled. He goes to an event and he is completely drawn into that event. So what he does is he knocks it down so that he doesn't have to feel compelled by it. This is classic what we do when we hear Musar, when we hear good, beautiful ideas that are compelling to us, that say to us, strengthen, lift yourself up, make yourself stronger. And we're not ready to do that. Rather than to say, I'm not ready for that, then what we need to do is that we need to knock down the person from where it's coming from. It's a defense mechanism. Leitzonos is not an art. Leitzonos is not a talent. Leitzonos is a defense mechanism, which to the outside world is so obvious. You see a person go to another person and say to them, with tears in their eyes, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is coming. I know I did something that wasn't so appropriate to you this year. Please forgive me. And the person's crying. The person's as sincere as it can be. If you say no to that, then you're just a hard-hearted person. You look at that and you say, okay, Baruch Hashem, they're sincere about it. You know what? We might have to talk about it. We might have to work out some things, but I accept your apology. Thank you. 2 days later, you walk past the person and you ignore them again. So what happened? What happened is that and somebody on the outside is looking at that and saying, wow, there must have been like another event. No other event. There was nothing else that happened. But the person who accepted the apology accepted it in an emotional way, and then they thought about it and said to themselves, wait, I don't want to give up. I don't want to let this person go. This person did something disgusting to me. I'm not just going to let that fly. I'm not just going to let that disappear. And was able to bring themselves back to their original anger because they looked at that person and they reminded themselves of the negativity of the terrible thing that person did. When you're standing on the outside and you watch a person who was apologized to, and then they just are continuing on the anger. So we often use the word sinas chinam, but it's much deeper than sinas chinam. It's actually the commitment to hate. And the reason it is because of the defense mechanism, because I don't really want to give up on you. I don't really want to give in to you. I don't really want to love you. So therefore what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a way to find you still guilty. When the outside world looks at these things, it's so obvious what a person is doing. Why is a person reacting that way? Why are they behaving that way? Because it's a defense mechanism. Because if they don't get angry, and if they don't do the things that they're going to do, so then they're going to have to take it on themselves and say, maybe I'm guilty. And rather than having to say that, so then we put up this defense mechanism of leitzanos, of scoffing. Because the truth is, if the event was so insignificant, then you would have no need to mock it. You just leave it alone, you'd walk away from it, and it wouldn't make a difference. But the reason why you mock it is because you care and you worry about its effect. And therefore, Shlomo Hamelech turns to that person and says to that person, Ad Mosai. That phrase, Ad Mosai, at the beginning of the pasuk applies to all three people. Ad Mosai, how much longer are you going to do this? Are you going to be chomed? Right? You see that word chomed. How are you going to have this chemda? You're going to have this desire for your leitzanos. Why do you have a desire for your leitzanos? Because that's what you hide behind. It's the cynicism that protects you. It's your defense against having to make a change in attitude, having to become closer to another person. And then finally we turn to the ksil. And we turn to the fool and we say to the fool, who's a fool? A fool is a person who's addicted to immediate gratification, to the extent that he unconsciously expects reality to align itself with his desires, and that the way that he sees the world, that's the way the world is. He can't accept the fact that God might have another way of looking at this world, that there might be another value system. As far as he's concerned, the way he sees it, that's the correct way. But he's not successful in learning. He's not successful in bringing in new chachma, because chachma threatens his mindless pursuit of gratification. Because the minute I become a chacham, that's the minute I'm going to realize that I can't be a hedonist. That's the minute that I'm going to realize that I can't it's not about me and pampering myself, and it's not just about my pleasures. There's some bigger thing going on here in life. But he's petrified of that. But for him, it's not enough just to make leitzanos. For the ksil, he has to do something more than that. And the only way that he could protect himself is by hating the thing that he's being drawn to. He can't just say, look, I'm not that religious. I'm not that kind of person. He looks at Torah and he says, what are you talking about? It was given by man. It wasn't given by God. It was 5 guys got together and each one of them wrote a section of the Bible, and they taped the whole thing together. They took staples and they made one book out of it. They say this. There are Jews that say this also. This is not only originally a Christian theory, but this is said by Jews. Graf and Wellhausen had this idea, but it was picked up in this century. I would say in the past couple of decades, it was picked up and rejuvenated again. And the reason why you have to do that, the reason why you have to look at the Torah and say the Torah is not the word of God, the Torah is not truth, is because you are so compelled by the Torah, and the only way to defend yourself is to hate that Torah. I pointed this out the other day when I read that Rashi, that ultimately where we have to get to in order to be able to protect ourselves, for people that are on this level, ultimately we have to get to the place of hating. That's why it says that Esav hated the Bechorah. Because the minute that Esav realized that he gave away his Bechorah and that he was a Magushim person, he was a person who was into materialism, he was a person who was stuck in his material world, and he couldn't recognize and appreciate the spirituality of being the firstborn, he felt short, he felt small. And the only way to live with himself was to say, I didn't want it anyway. It's disgusting anyway. Being a firstborn is not everything it's cooked up to be. It's nothing. It's not worth anything. Vayivez Esav es haBechorah. He had to hate the firstbornship. So it was the only way he was going to be able to deal with it. Shlomo Hamelech turns to this person and says, Ad Mosai, when are you going to grow up, buddy? When are you going to deal with this? And when are you going to start thinking? And when are you going to get to stop yisneu da'as, to stop hating your das? See, his problem is not just that he's hiding behind Chamdu. His problem is not just that he's being influenced by Te'ahevu. His problem is Yisna'u, that he hates the Torah, because that's the only way he can keep he can keep that guilt away from himself. So Shlomo Hamelech turns to him and says, Yuksil ad Mosai, how much longer are Yisnu das? Beautiful. Shlomo Hamelech recognizes that there are three types of people that cannot go out into the street and get their chachma because they're stuck. The Pesi, the Letz, and the Ksil. It's always good to be able to point out a problem. It's even better to give a solution. Tomorrow morning, pasuk Chav Gimel, solution. No hints this time, but you can look at the pasuk and see how is that pasuk talking, which parts of that pasuk is talking to the Pesi, which is talking to the Letz, and which is talking to the Ksil. Okay, beautiful. We'll stop there. Everybody should have a beautiful, wonderful, amazing day. And Mirza Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow with the solutions.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Okay, have a wonderful day.
Chodesh Tov, everybody.
Chodesh Tov, Chodesh Tov. It should be the beginning of an amazing Chodesh, a Chodesh of bracha, a Chodesh of nechama, a Chodesh of blessing, a Chodesh of comfort, a Chodesh of joy, and a Chodesh of preparation as we get ready to stand on the Yom Adin.
Amen.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.